Well, thank you, Margaret, and thank you, everyone, for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. Last time we got together was in Gillette in 2017. Was that the year? 2017 or 2018? Last time they hosted the national meeting. Anyways, it was an opportunity to be with you there. Many of you who knew Leroy Johnson, who remembers Leroy Johnson in here? Raise your hand. Any of us? Great. Leroy judged our show last time, and for those of you who aren't aware, Leroy passed this May. And so it's an honor to be able to come back to a breed that he's contributed with at an institution he worked with. I know he's fond of the Columbia breed, and we're all fond of Leroy. So what I'd like to do today is not rehash the same stuff that I teach all the time, several times a year, okay? So there's nothing worse than you having to listen to me regurgitate the same information, but it's also not very fun for me to regurgitate the same information. So I'm going to step out on a limb today and present some things that hopefully are thought-provoking. We're going to have some interactive, hands-on learning opportunities where we're going to break this up. But my hope is that we keep this pretty conversational and formal, but also a little bit philosophical. Because I think all of us, no matter what aspect of life it is that we work in, it's always good to every once in a while take a look at ourselves or our operations and say, I wonder where I'm at. And so I'm going to pose those rhetorical questions. Do not take those rhetorical questions as anything other than thought-provoking questions. They're not condemnations of anything. But before I get into it, I just want to point out my students. My graduate student, Courtney Newman. Courtney, raise your hand. Okay, Courtney's been working with me for over a year. We have two excellent undergraduate research interns that are actually doing a grazing study about 10 miles from here at the USDA Cheyenne Research Center, grazing larkspur. And so they are thrilled to not be moving temporary electronet fence all day today. So if they look tired or overjoyed, it's because they're not there. So, yeah. And so I got to give them credit. They've helped me put this together. They helped with the ultrasounding, and it's great to have the next generation involved in what we do. So let's get into some numbers. I'm really going to dump the academic jargon on you, and then I'm going to move quickly away from it, okay? So if you start, the yawning is going to start here. It's going to go down, and then it might peak again at the beginning, or at the end, okay? So right here we have a heritability table, and basically, simplified, all the traits that we can measure have a heritability estimate of 0 to 1, okay? So we could pretend this 0.59 is 59% heritable, okay? So remember that scale, 0 being lowly heritable, meaning the offspring won't generally reflect what the parents are. The higher the number would indicate that the offspring would reflect what the parents do in terms of what they shear for fiber diameter, what they shear for length, how heavy their wool they shear. And what should come to mind as we look at these traits here at the top, these traits that we deal with when it comes to fiber growth and wool growth, those are the most heritable traits that we get to work with, okay? And that's one of the beauty, and I think that's why we all have an inherent passion for wool, is because if we make a poor decision on a dam or a ram, we usually see it reflected in the following generation with great certainty, okay? So generally speaking, the accuracy of these heritable traits is pretty good on the individual animal that we're measuring, okay? So if we have a ram in the barn that's a 25 micron, chances are it has a high probability its offspring are going to be 25 micron. Okay, the dam obviously is half of that equation. But what this tells us, folks, is that we can make improvements with wool pretty quick. On the flip side, we can go backwards pretty quick when it comes to selecting on the phenotype of the parents, okay? When we deal with some of these other traits that are important, but holy smokes, we need better technology to accurately select feed efficiency, carcass merit, some of those other things, especially like reproductive traits. You can see that the accuracy of these traits on the individual is pretty low, in the teens. So that's mostly to get us clued in on the fact that the improvement we can make is pretty rapid when it comes to fleece traits. What also complicates things, as you all well know, is that one action results in an equal or opposite reaction, right? Getting back to the law of thermodynamics. So if you solely fixate on one wool trait, let's just say, I'm going to pick an example that is pretty common. The fixation with micron, okay? Now I say fixation with micron. Micron matters because that's major determinant of how much we get for our wool, right? We know that generally speaking, the lower the micron, the higher the price per pound. But what happens if that was the only wool characteristic that we ever paid attention to? What do you think happens to the other traits? So, okay, so I'm seeing some fingers down, I'm seeing some fingers up. Let's talk about, this is based off some other wool breeds, but let's look at the example of the Targhee. Heaven forbid I called the Targhee a close cousin. Are we okay if I say that, or am I going to be run out of here? Let's talk about the origins of the Columbia, okay? These are not too far removed from each other, okay? Are we okay with that? Maybe not, but I'm going to use the example anyways, okay? So for the Targhee breed, if they only selected on lower fiber diameter, they quickly saw a reduction in fleece weight. If they just paid attention to getting a low micron, they lost fleece weight, okay? Here's some other traits within the Rambouillet breed. Okay, I wish I had some of these correlation coefficients to tell you what the Columbia breed does, but I don't. But I'm pretty sure these are going to be pretty similar. So clean yield. Let's just say that we selected on yield. Not many of us are able to do that. We would see a reduction in the crimp design over time. Okay, if we selected, none of us are doing this. If we selected for a coarser micron or a higher micron over time, we would see an indirect increase on staple length and grease fleece weight, okay? I think you get the point. What I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to set the stage for is we need to be paying attention to multiple fleece traits within the breed, okay? It's not just micron, especially a breed like the Columbia, it's staple length. That's one of the things I love about the Columbia breed is in its origins, it has some of that Lincoln longwool thrown in there, which should give us all an excellent staple. The mill or the buyer should never be disappointed with the length of our Columbia wool. That is something that we excel in, okay? Grease fleece weight for the Columbia breed. How heavy are we shearing, okay? Uniformity. We'll talk about all those things, but I hope if you walk away with nothing more than this message is single trait selection or discriminating on a single trait never gets us anywhere, especially with wool. And I've seen this all over the industry. One other thing, I know this looks like a busy figure and I'll just dissect this real quick. We conduct a RAM test every year in the fall, okay? We realize that central performance testing or RAM testing is not the most accurate genetic selection tool that we have. Remember, if we just measure on the individual animal, the accuracy of what the offspring are going to do is pretty low. But we still believe in central performance testing to know where we're at, okay? What we've determined over the years and what's really been shown abroad internationally is that the larger the surface area of the animal or the bigger the animal, the more follicles producing wool, the larger the fleece weight, okay? And this sometimes I think we don't put enough emphasis on is that we can make sheep bigger and they will shear heavier wool. That has been proven time and time again, and it's something that we need to keep an eye on. How much wool are we producing per pound of body weight, okay? And so I'm going to come back to this, but we all need to understand these principles before we move forward. The larger the surface area, the larger the fleece weight. One of the greatest challenges I have, I think all people that judge wool at these types of events are, when we see a fleece on the table, we don't know much about its production. And I think if I was going to do a Super Bowl of wool evaluation or wool shows, I'd have performance records with every fleece. Because something to keep in mind is that a major determinant of fleece weight is what the other demands on that ewe were, okay? So if she was raising twin lambs, she is not going to partition those nutrients to fiber growth, okay? If she was gestating those lambs for 150 days and then she's milking like crazy, her fleece weight is going to be less than a ewe who never lambed at all or a ewe who only gave you a single, okay? And that has been determined time and time again as well. So when I see this beautiful 12, 15-pound fleece on the table, you might want to lie to the judge and say, oh yeah, it had a lamb, okay? We really don't know what the background is, but generally it's about a half a pound to a pound difference of a single-bearing ewe versus a twin ewe on fleece weight, okay? There is an age component too. If I said I was in my prime, how many of you would call BS right now? Anybody? Okay, thank you. Why? My students were the first to raise their hand. Okay, maybe 10 years ago, I would say I was doing pretty darn good. I think I'm at the asymptote of that curve and I'm going to start going down. Much like our ewes, if we had to pick a ewe in her prime where she should be doing her best reproductively and she should be doing her best from a fiber growth perspective, it's been proven to be about 3 years of age, 3 to 4 years of age, okay? So equally, when I see this beautiful ewe fleece or a ewe class, again, the ivory tower academic within wants to say, man, do you know the age of that ewe, or what did her lambs look like? Because I know that fiber growth is something that's partitioned very at the end after all of her physiological needs are met, gestating those lambs, making sure her maintenance requirements are provided.